Pain can be such a powerful teacher if you learn how to work with it, if you learn how to look at it differently and not resist it. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite authors, Michael Singer from The Untethered Soul, is one of the essential requirements for true spiritual growth and deep personal transformation is coming to peace with pain. And today I'm talking about both physical and emotional pain. So in this video, I'm going to dive into shadow work. I'm gonna give a little bit of background of what it is, some of the science behind it, and I'm gonna share a couple personal stories of times in my life where I've had to deal with severe physical and emotional pain. And these ultimately served as really major life lessons for me because somehow I was able to transcend that pain, and once I did, it unblocked something in my subconscious mind that was keeping me feeling small, feeling powerless. So once I unblocked that, it freed me from this energy, and it up-leveled my energy. So this is exactly what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to share how I did it. I'm going to share some tips so that you can do it as well, and you're going to see how truly powerful this work can be. Before we dive in, hello, my name is Talia, and on this channel, I share wisdom on how you can transcend into new levels of consciousness to help you grow your self-worth and ultimately live a more authentic life. If that sounds interesting to you, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a like. All right, I'm gonna start by giving a little bit of background on the shadow, but before I get into that, I want to highlight this quote, "What you resist persists." And the reason I'm bringing this up is because everything that I'm gonna talk about ends up folding back into this statement. So, the shadow. The shadow is a term that was first coined by the famous psychoanalyst Carl Jung. He didn't invent shadow work, he just coined the term for kind of the Western part of the world. But this is work that has been done for millions of years by shamans and very spiritual traditions. But what the shadow really is all those parts of yourself that you don't like, that you reject. For one reason or another, we all have parts in ourselves that we don't like, that we don't think we should be showing to the world because we might not be accepted if we do, because we were told that those things were wrong or they weren't cool. So what we do is we repress it down into our subconscious mind, and we start putting on a mask that we put out into society that we think is gonna be a more acceptable personality than the one we truly are within ourselves. So ultimately, once we start hiding these things about ourselves, we start creating beliefs around what we think is right and what we think is wrong. And all these beliefs is what ends up shaping our identity as we are today. And Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. So what ends up happening is, let's say somebody when you were little told you that you were terrible at drawing. You loved drawing, but this one teacher looked at your drawing in class and she was like, "That is terrible. You are such a bad artist." And you know, you were little, you didn't know any better, and so you took that as the truth. And that got imprinted into your subconscious mind, and then you grew up and you just always assumed that you were terrible at drawing. But that was one person's opinion, but it got pushed down because you were like, "No, I mean, I don't like how I feel. I don't like how that statement made me feel. So because I don't like that, I'm gonna push it down. I'm gonna bottle it up into my subconscious because I never want to feel like that again. That was horrible." So then what happened is that just became a belief, and you took it as real, and then you're just going about your life always thinking that you're terrible at drawing and repressing that desire of yours to be an artist. Shadow work then is the process of making the unconscious conscious so that we can ultimately unblock those limiting beliefs that are holding our power. Because why? Because what we resist persists. And if you're resisting your need to be an artist and you're just doing what you think society is telling you should do or not do, then guess what? You are always going to be unhappy because you are repressing your true desire, your true, authentic need and calling to be an artist. And this is obviously just one example, but you know what I mean, I hope. So in doing this work, we start to gain awareness of all these unconscious beliefs that we have, and then we can start to choose whether we want to keep believing them or not. Let's take another example. Somebody called you ugly when you were little because they didn't like your nose. So then you grew up and you always thought that you were really ugly because your nose was the most disgusting nose in the world. But who the hell determines what is supposed to be ugly and what is supposed to be beautiful? What is beautiful in one part of the world is not beautiful in another part of the world. So then you just always have trouble dating because you never feel good enough, because you never feel beautiful. So this just turns into this self-loathing for yourself because of that one comment that somebody made back in the day. So the real way around this is to start accepting your shadow. But I recently came across this book, Existential Kink, by Carolyn Elliott, and her take is not just accepting the shadow, but loving your shadow, falling in love with those aspects of yourself that you hate. And she takes an interesting spin on it because she says you can even get turned on by those things that you hate. It's a little extreme, but it's interesting because she's saying take pleasure in those things that you start to hate, because then that makes you start to drop the resistance to it. It is the ego that discriminates things as good or bad based on what society decided is good or bad, and then that ultimately gets imprinted in your brain. But think about it, nothing is totally good or totally bad. It's just beliefs. Think about it. In this part of the world, I don't know where you might be watching, but I'm filming this from Miami. What is perceived as normal here is for couples to be monogamous. That is the mostly accepted norm, but in the Middle East, you will find men with multiple wives, and that's normal there. So you get my point, it's all relative. But okay, let's come back to my point on pain. So the link between pleasure and pain is actually deeply rooted in our biology. To start off, all pain causes the central nervous system to release endorphins. The function of endorphins is to block pain, which ends up working in a similar way to how opiates work, which induce people to these feelings of euphoria. So if you think about people who are into S&M, they are voluntarily exposing themselves to pain because they get pleasure from it. But in our case, when we feel pain, whether emotional or physical, the difference there is that we're not agreeing to it. Hence, we don't like it and we resist it. But in some subconscious way, and this is the whole premise of Existential Kink, your brain actually does like it. You see, if when you were little, you were used to not receiving love from your parents, from your caretakers, then that's what your brain processed as the normal, as what it knows. So again, you grow up and then you start looking out for those things that it knows. It doesn't determine whether it likes it or dislikes it or it's good or bad. Your brain is always going to look out for what it knows, because what's unfamiliar, it does not like. So in a crazy, messed up, weird way, your brain likes that thing that you think that you don't like. Make sense? Which would also explain why there's so many people out there which are addicted to toxic relationships and toxic dynamics, and they think they don't want it, but they're still there because subconsciously they do want it. Okay, so what do we do about this? How do we start working with our shadow? It's actually pretty simple, but of course in practice it's not going to be as simple, because this is about complete, radical acceptance of every single aspect of yourself. The things that you're ashamed about, the things that you find disgusting in yourself, the things that you think are weird, not cool, the things that you don't like about your body, your personality, everything. And what you basically need to start doing is observing yourself. And this is why so many spiritual teachers talk about becoming the consciousness that observes the personality being your ego, the consciousness being the observer of the ego. And what you need to do is observe your reactions, your patterns. Every time you get those triggers, every time you feel jealousy towards somebody, every time somebody makes you angry, observe those feelings. And you need to observe them with innocence rather than with judgment. You cannot be judging yourself or criticizing for feeling what you're feeling, because again, it is complete radical acceptance. So what you need to be doing is just observing and questioning, because there's a belief behind that feeling. But there's something that was imprinted when you were little, maybe not that little, but something was imprinted at some point in your life. And you need to bring it out from your own conscious, so that by observing it, you're starting to do that, and trying to see if you can actually pinpoint what is the story, the belief behind this feeling. And this may take some work. It won't be immediately that you're gonna see it, but the more you do this, the more you're gonna start bringing things out. And then what you then need to do is, once you uncover the belief, you need to just accept it. You need to no longer fight against that belief, because again, what you resist persists. So if it's coming up, You need to let it be. Free it from your body. And what acceptance does is it neutralizes this feeling. It neutralizes it, because if you're no longer resisting and this thing is trying to come out, and your whole life you've been like, no, I don't want to feel you, and then you stop resisting, guess what? It leaves your system. It leaves your unconscious. Now, if you've been doing spiritual work for a while and you know a lot about manifestation, you know that everybody's talking about visualizing and feeling the feeling of your goals being realized, which absolutely, they fully work. The problem is that if you are still not accepting your negative feelings, you can be unconsciously blocking your manifestations. So this is the other aspect of spirituality that is not that talked about, because, well, frankly, it's not that much fun to deal with the shit about you that you don't like. But if you're brave enough to face those things that you don't like about yourself, it's gonna be so transformational, because that shit is holding your power so much. You have no idea. And the times when I've had major breakthroughs in my life has been precisely the times when I faced my fears and I moved right through them. So I'll share about a time when I was dealing with very severe physical pain and how I got my lesson through that. It was last year. I went through an egg freezing process, and after the extraction, after the surgery was done, I started feeling this pain in my uterus, and one night I ended up at the ER because it was getting really bad. They didn't do anything about it. They were like, oh yeah, your uterus is swollen. I was like, yeah, of course, because I just went through this whole egg freezing process. They didn't do anything about it. I came home and I wake up at 3 a.m. approximately, and I have a fever. I feel like somebody is stabbing me in my uterus. And I have nausea. I wake up, I go to the toilet thinking I'm gonna throw up. I can't throw up. I end up trying to come back to my bed. I end up in the floor. And I'm in so much pain. I'm delirious of pain, that I don't even have the strength to grab my phone and call somebody for help. And so I'm just like lying there, and I go, and I think I'm gonna die, because it's that bad. And then I think, okay, wait a minute, this is a fever. And I actually think about Joe Dispenza at that point. I'm a big fan of him. I always refer to him. But I remember he one time said that when he was little, he loved getting fevers because he would end up traveling to other dimensions. So that moment, I think, okay, it's a fever. Maybe if I use this opportunity to just let the fever be, and then maybe I can travel to other dimensions too. It's so dumb. But just the fact that I accepted the pain rather than trying to fight it, because I couldn't do anything about it. I was completely debilitated. And the moment I was like, okay, I'm just going to feel the pain. What am I going to do? At that moment, I passed out. I wouldn't say I went to sleep. I passed out. And then that morning, I woke up and the pain never came back. And it was pain that had been there for like at least 3 days. So the lesson there was the acceptance of the pain is what made the pain go away. And then similarly, I had this breakthrough at Joe Dispenza's retreat, which I've talked about in previous videos. I can link that here. But it was from meditating and sitting down for a really long time. It was when I observed the pain from sitting down without moving or trying to come back to my comfort zone. When I just observed the pain, I had a massive breakthrough. Massive. You should really go watch that video, because I have all that detail there. But something was unblocked within me, because I noticed I have this tendency of avoiding pain, whether it's physical or emotional. I've always just tried to stay in my comfort zone. It's like everybody does, right? Like we don't like to be uncomfortable. But it's overall this idea of transcending the pain. And then as I was reading this book that talks about how pain and pleasure are so linked together, the other day I was at the cold plunge. And if you've done this, you know that the body habituates really fast. It's like, and as I was there, as soon as you get in there, you're freezing and it's really uncomfortable. But it's about 2.5 minutes where the body's just habituates, and then you're no longer freezing. It's just like you're there. And I remember thinking the first couple minutes, I just stayed there, and And I was like, let me see if I can enjoy this. And then there was that little mini sensation that didn't feel all that bad. So I was like, oh yeah, you can kind of transmute that pain into pleasure if you choose to. So I encourage you to try that. Again, next time you feel some pain, see if you can turn it around. It takes a lot of mental power, but that is how you start to neutralize the pain. And then from an emotional aspect, I also have a video where I talk about how when I was dealing with this relationship that was super toxic and we would always fight. I mean, I was way deep into that toxic dynamic with this person. It was the moment when I felt myself getting triggered because he did something that I didn't like that triggered some trauma in me. But the moment I felt that triggered, I was like, hold on. And I observed it and I started questioning myself. I literally, my head was already like, he's cheating on me. He's been lying to me the whole time. He's been doing this, this, and that. And it made no sense. It was just my own trauma surfacing. And the moment I caught it and I kind of calmed myself down, again, something switched. Something I could just tell. And then you feel like, after these things happen, you feel stronger. It's hard to explain, but once you start doing it, it's like, oh, then that thing that triggered you no longer triggers you. So that's how you start. That's what we mean by power. It's like every time, if these things were affecting you in the past and then suddenly you are neutralizing them, then you have more energy for other things. Because these things were holding you down. They were keeping you down and keeping you feeling small. And then all of a sudden, they no longer affect you, so you can go about your day and focus your energy on more important things, right? Emotions typically have a very short time span that they stay in the body, but because we don't like them, because we resist them, they stay in the body. Because what you resist persists. So remember, you are not who you think you are. You are a compilation of beliefs that you absorbed from society, so you get to choose who you are. You need to realize that you have the option to choose who you want to be. So yes, this can be done through repetitions, affirmations, blah, 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 visualization, but also by observing your fears and the things that you don't like about yourself, bringing them up to the conscious mind and freeing yourself from them. I just went last night to watch Inside Out 2. It describes all of this beautifully. Highly recommend that you go watch it. So move in the direction of greater self-awareness, self-mastery, and self-compassion for every single aspect of yourself. So practice accepting your shadow and seeking to unlock the wisdom that they contain. Because once you do that, fear becomes an opportunity for courage. Pain becomes a catalyst for strength and resilience. Aggression can be transmuted into passion, fuel. And then your life is no longer ran by all of these subconscious beliefs, but you actually take control of your life and you take your power back to create the life that you want exactly the way you want it. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I recommend you watch this other video where I talk exactly the steps I took to unblock this emotional trigger that I had in this toxic relationship. I think it will be very informative. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week.